He never plugged in the second controller, but someone was playing anyway. It started with a game from his childhood, Shadow Veil. A weird, forgotten side-scroller from the early 2000s. Obscure, grim, the kind of thing you'd find on a demo disc, then never see again. But to Caleb, it was nostalgic. He found it online, a bootleg room buried deep on a retro gaming forum. The first red flag? The file name wasn't shadowveil.iso. It was player2awaits.exe. He downloaded it anyway. When a menu loaded, the theme music was slower, distorted. The title screen flickered like old tape, but still worked. The pixelated protagonist stood alone in a foggy graveyard, just like he remembered. Only this time, there were two characters. A second sprite stood beside him. Identical, except its face was blank. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, flesh-tone mask. Caleb assumed it was a glitch. Probably a debug model or leftover asset. He tried to open the settings to disable multiplayer, but there were no menus. No options. No save slots. Just continue. And yet, he'd never played this before. When the game began, the second player moved. Not with him, independently. It didn't follow his path. It didn't mirror his actions. It just wandered, occasionally staring at him, as much as a sprite with no face could. Caleb paused the game. The second sprite kept walking. He alt-tabbed. The game didn't minimize. He hit escape. No effect. Finally, he force-quit the program. The screen went black. For a moment, he saw his own reflection in the monitor, and something standing behind him. Just a coat, he told himself. A trick of the dim light. He turned on his desk lamp, shutting the laptop. The next night, curiosity got the better of him. He launched the game again. Player2awaits.exe opened immediately. No menu. No intro. He was in the game world again, right where he left off. This time, Player 2 stood closer, staring. Caleb moved away, deeper into the level. The environment was different. The usual stone pathways and dripping crypts were replaced by warped corridors, twisting black hallways that resembled his apartment. Pixelated wallpaper. Familiar furniture. A distorted clock on the wall that always read 3:33. Player 2 followed. The deeper he went, the more personal it became. In one hallway, he saw a flickering painting on the wall, his childhood bedroom. Another room resembled the basement where his father used to scream at him. The game knew him, and Player 2, it never attacked, never helped. It just existed, watching, mirroring. In one level, Caleb's character stepped onto a pressure plate. A gate opened across the map. Before he could reach it, Player 2 entered instead. The gate slammed shut, and the text appeared. You are not the protagonist anymore. Caleb closed the laptop. This time, the sound didn't stop. He heard footsteps behind his desk. Not from the speakers, from the floorboards. Heavy, cautious. He turned, no one. He deleted the game, emptied his recycle bin, wiped his drive. But when he turned on a laptop the next morning, the wallpaper had changed. It showed the two sprites, Player 1 and Player 2. Only now, Player 1 had the blank face. The keyboard stopped responding. The trackpad didn't work. He reached to shut the lid. The screen blinked. A message appeared in red pixel font. You invited him back when you remembered. The door behind him creaked open. He lived alone. Caleb stopped sleeping in his room. He unplugged his laptop, left it in the closet, bought a new one, even moved to a different apartment. But every so often, a notification would flash in the corner of the screen. Player 2 has joined the game. He changed emails, reset all accounts. The messages didn't stop. Then came the worst part. One day, while playing a completely unrelated game, Night Tower, a basic roguelike, he entered a level that looked eerily familiar. Stone floors, cracked walls, a blood-red sky. In the distance, he saw a pixelated figure with a blank face standing still, waiting. He tried to quit the game, but this wasn't Shadow Veil. And yet, somehow, Player 2 had followed him. Every game since then has had glitches. Small things, extra shadows, menu options that weren't there before, NPCs that whisper things like, he's behind you, and always, Player 2, even in single-player modes, even in offline games, especially then, Once, in a new game Caleb had never played before, the loading screen froze, then flickered. It displayed a familiar message. Welcome back. Player 1 has returned. He tried to reset his entire system, but instead of booting up, the screen glitched into static. A distorted voice played through the speakers. You can't uninstall memory. He disconnected everything. Now he uses no tech. No consoles. No PC. He writes in notebooks. Reads by candlelight. His friends think he's paranoid. But sometimes, in the dark, he still hears the low hum of electronics. A soft click, like a controller being picked up. And once, after months of silence, he found a note on his kitchen counter, written in jagged handwriting. It read, "Ready to play again? This time, you be player 2. He lives with all the lights on now, and he never, ever turns his back on a blank screen." You ever notice how the player list sometimes flickers before updating? Like, for just a second, it shows someone who shouldn't be there. I used to think it was a bug, until I saw his name. The friend who died a year ago. It started during one of those late-night gaming sessions. You know the kind, dead silence outside. Hum of the monitor, empty Red Bull cans beside your mouse. I was hosting a private Minecraft server. Nothing fancy, just me, some close friends from school, and a big survival map we'd been building for weeks. There were 4 of us originally. Me, Liam, Nate, and Jordan. We used to game every Friday night. That was before Jordan's accident. A car wreck. It happened just after a late session. I still remember the last thing he said on voice chat. "All right, guys, one more dungeon, then I'm crashing." Literally. It was a dumb joke at the time. But now, it sticks in my head like a glitchy echo. A month after the funeral, none of us really talked about it. But we kept the server going. It was kind of our way of keeping Jordan's memory alive. His house still stood on the hill, untouched. His chest full of diamond gear sat exactly how he'd left it. We even left a sign, "Jay's Castle, do not touch." Fast forward to late October. It was one of those solo nights. Nate and Liam were busy, so I was alone on the server. Just mining, exploring. The usual. And that's when it happened. Jordan has joined the game. My heart stopped. That exact name. Same capitalization. Same spacing. Not Jordan 123 or some random alt. Just Jordan. Like he never left. At first, I assumed it was one of the guys messing with me. I typed in chat. Not funny. No response. I opened the server log. No IP registered. No login source. Just Jordan. And then I saw him. Standing on the edge of the forest biome near spawn. Diamond armor. Holding a fishing rod. His favorite item in the game. The exact setup he had before everything. He didn't move. He didn't speak. I went to sleep thinking it was a prank, or maybe some leftover file or weird ghost data in the server cache. I told myself I'd wipe the player files the next morning. But then it kept happening. Jordan has joined the game. Every few nights. No pattern. No message in chat. Just presence. Once I approached him. I typed, "Is this Nate? Seriously. It's not funny anymore." He turned to face me. He didn't type anything, but a single sign appeared at his feet. Just one word. Cold. The sign vanished a second later. That's when I started checking things. Server logs, plugin files, even backend Java code. Nothing. No trace of any connection. It was as if the server itself thought Jordan belonged. Liam didn't believe me until it happened on a stream. We were building a nether fortress when Jordan appeared on a distant ridge. Watching. No name tag. No movement. Just standing there. The chat exploded. "Who's that? You got a new member? Is this an ARG?" Liam saw it too. He went quiet for the rest of the stream. We tried banning the account. The server threw an error. Something like, "Player does not exist." Not player not found. Not invalid ID. Just does not exist. Then came the changes. Subtle at first. Blocks rearranging overnight. Jordan's house lighting up even though we removed the redstone. New signs appearing near his base. Words like here, still, below. One night, I ventured down into an old mine shaft near spawn. It was a place Jordan had died once, his last in-game death before the real one. He used to joke about it, say my soul's probably still down there. As I descended, I heard footsteps. Not zombie footsteps. Not skeletons. Player footsteps. I turned a corner and found a sign on the tunnel wall. You left me here. Then the torches went out. All of them. At once. I logged off and didn't return for a week. Nate finally admitted something then. He had a dream, recurring, he said, where Jordan was playing with us again. But the world was twisted. The blocks melted like wax. The mobs were silent. And Jordan's voice kept saying, "I'm not done playing yet." We thought maybe it was grief. Shared delusion. PTSD from losing a close friend. But then came the voice chat incident. One night, we were all on Discord, talking casually. Mid-convo, a fourth voice cut in. Not through the server. Through our call. It was staticky. Choppy. But familiar. It said, "Why did you stop the game?" Then silence. The user ID didn't exist. There was no fourth caller. We replayed the recording. It wasn't there. Only we had heard it live. Then Jordan's skin changed. Before, it was his usual blue hoodie, headphone smile. Now it was grayed, distorted, hollow eyes, mouth missing, like a corrupted skin file. We couldn't trace the file location. It was injected into the server texture pack somehow. None of us uploaded it. I decided to shut it all down. End the server. Move on. The night before I deleted it, I logged in one last time. The world had changed. Jordan's house was gone. In its place stood a tower. Blackstone and soul lanterns. It wasn't possible. Those blocks didn't exist when he last played. Inside was a spiral staircase leading underground. At the bottom, a single chest. Inside, a fishing rod, a sign, and a book titled "Still Playing." The sign read, "I never logged out. I closed the server. Permanently." But that wasn't the end. Last week, I got a friend request on Steam. No profile picture. No friends. Just the name. Jordan. And a message. New game. Trevor was the kind of gamer who explored every obscure corner of the internet for strange, forgotten titles. Things that never made it to Steam, things too weird for Reddit, things whispered about on forums with dead moderators and outdated layouts. That night, buried on a thread titled "Things That Shouldn't Be Played," he found something new. No description, no screenshots, just a black button that said, "Install. Midnight only." The download was lightning fast. Less than a second. The file name, collect.exe. The icon was just a hollow circle. There were no settings, no menus. The moment he double-clicked it, his screen faded to black. No boot up, no logos, no loading bar. Just black, and then white text. "You left something behind. Let's show you where." The game world loaded into what looked like a low-poly version of his childhood home. But stripped down, textureless, empty. The walls were there, the layout was correct, but it was like someone had recreated it from memory, and a faded one at that. No furniture, no sounds, not even background music, just his own soft footsteps. At first, Trevor thought it was some sort of nostalgia-based horror game. There are a few indie devs who dabble in that, simulate the feeling of the memory, twist it into something eerie. But then he noticed something that froze him. In a corner of one room, his old bedroom, there was a photo frame on the floor. It was broken. The glass was missing, but he recognized the photo inside. It was of him and his brother, Kyle. But Kyle wasn't smiling. He always smiled in that photo. Back in real life, Kyle had died in a hiking accident 5 years ago. It was something Trevor never spoke about. They'd argued the day before the trip. The last words between them were cold. He'd buried that guilt somewhere deep, or at least he thought he had. In the game, the photo pulsed. A faint sound played as he moved closer. Not music, just static, soft and whispering. Then the screen flashed red for a single frame. Just one. The hallway behind him, previously empty, was now occupied. A figure, identical to him, but flickering. Head tilted, arms slack, like a puppet waiting for strings. Trevor backed away. He tried to quit the game. No menu. No escape key. Alt+F4 didn't work. When he turned back, the figure was gone. The game now displayed a message at the top of the screen. Midnight, 28 minutes and 4 seconds. A timer, counting down. He hadn't noticed it before. He didn't understand it either. Was it a time limit to escape? Or something worse? As the timer ticked down, the world began to change. Rooms started to fill with objects. But they weren't normal. A mirror that showed a version of him with no eyes. A chair that rotated by itself every time he turned away. A phone that rang, but only when he was in a different room. When he answered it once, he heard his own voice whisper, "You shouldn't have come back here." Trevor explored further. The basement, once locked, was now open. Down there, the graphics broke. Walls shifted. Textures glitched. The sound design distorted into low, guttural loops. It was like the game was degrading as the clock ticked. Then he found a final door, one he didn't recognize from real life. It had no handle, just a keyhole, but he had no key. The game displayed another message. To remember is to unlock. This is where Trevor did something few players would have thought to do. He tabbed out, not to cheat, but to remember. He went into his old folders, his real ones, documents, photos, saved messages. He found a picture of Kyle, age 10, wearing a paper crown, holding up a plastic sword. Their homemade game, Kingdom of Collect, a game they made up together when they were kids. A secret fantasy world, something only they knew. The game wasn't called Collect.exe for no reason. He dragged the photo into the game folder. The second he did, the door in-game unlocked. Inside the door was a throne room. Low-res, abstract. Kyle was standing at the far end. Only, he wasn't Kyle. He was a stitched-together version of Kyle and Trevor, wearing the crown, holding the sword. Above him, the final message. "You crown guilt. Now serve it." The timer hit 0. The game didn't crash. It didn't freeze. It just blinked out. Gone. Not just closed, uninstalled. Not even in the recycling bin. No trace. But here's where it gets strange. Trevor's files, the real ones, had been rearranged. Photos he knew were in separate folders were now together. Pictures he hadn't opened in years were placed front and center. Old chat logs reopened. One from Kyle. His last message was pinned open. "Don't be mad tomorrow. It's just a hike. I'll be back by Sunday." Trevor hadn't seen that message in 5 years. He'd forgotten it even existed. Then, at the exact moment the game disappeared, his computer restarted. Booted up with no error. Everything seemed normal, except for one thing. On his desktop, where the game icon used to be, there was a new image. Not a file, an embedded image burned into the background. It was the throne room. Empty. No figure. No sword. Just a crown. Lying on the floor. The timestamp on the image? 12 a.m. Some say Collect.exe was an ARG, a grief processing art piece that only triggers if your system has certain keywords or emotional data in its search history. Others claim it's malware designed to mess with your psyche, scraping photos, mimicking voices, manipulating nostalgia. But there's one theory that never made it to Reddit. It circulated briefly on an old .onion board before the post was taken down. It claimed the game doesn't run on code. It runs on regret. That it only appears to those who've buried a memory so deeply it begins to rot. And that at midnight, the game purges what was never faced. And in doing so, deletes not just the game, but the version of you that refused to remember. Logan, a 19-year-old college freshman, had been gaming since high school. He wasn't easily rattled. He played every scary title you could name. Outlast, Visage PT. He liked the adrenaline. But this wasn't that kind of fear. This was colder. Slower. It crept in. The match began like any other. 3v3, randomized lobby, open voice chat. Logan recognized none of the usernames. But what stood out wasn't the players. It was the silence. Nobody spoke. No mic crackle, no ambient chatter. Just footsteps, gunfire, reloads. Too quiet for a public game. Then it happened. About 4 minutes in, as Logan rounded a corner in-game, his headset picked up a whisper. "Don't turn around." It wasn't directional audio. It didn't sound like proximity-based dialogue. This voice came from the headset directly, a whisper that felt like it brushed against his neck. He paused. No one else reacted. No laughter, no trolling. He unmuted his mic. "Yo, who said that?" Silence. Then someone finally spoke, one of his teammates. "Say what?" "I haven't had my mic on." The other responded, almost annoyed. "Nobody's talking, man. Just play." Logan didn't believe it was his imagination. The whisper had been too real, too clear, almost like it was meant only for him. Still, he brushed it off. Maybe a glitch. Maybe someone trying to be creepy. But a few minutes later, another whisper. "We see you now." This time, it wasn't singular. There were multiple voices layered into the sound, distorted, overlapping like several people speaking the same sentence in unison, but a few milliseconds out of sync. Like a choir made of broken cassette tapes. Logan ripped off his headset, heart racing. He checked the game files, verified the voice chat settings, ran a malware scan. Nothing. That's when the DM came in. An anonymous account. No profile pic, no history, just a message. "Turn your mic on. It's rude not to speak when spoken to." He blocked it, but blocking didn't stop what came next. The next night, 3 a.m. again, Logan couldn't sleep. He logged on to unwind. Same game, new lobby, but something was off. The map loaded, but this time, the usual urban war zone was changed. It looked glitchy, sure, but beyond that, it looked wrong. There were flickers of something in the shadows. Textures that didn't belong. A door that appeared and disappeared every few seconds. Things that weren't in the base game. He assumed it was a modded lobby, but when he checked the server list, it showed. Private match, solo. Except he wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed through the map, but his player list was empty. No teammates, no opponents. Then the whispers returned. "Logan." This time they said his name. He froze. No way. This wasn't tied to his account name. Logan wasn't anywhere in his Steam handle, Xbox ID, Discord. He hadn't voice chatted, hadn't typed it. So how did they know? On instinct, he alt-tabbed and turned off his mic input. Maybe the game was listening. Maybe someone had hacked his audio stream. The moment he disabled it, his screen flickered. For a split second, instead of the game, he saw a webcam feed, his own room from a high angle, like from the ceiling. Then it cut back to the game. He unplugged everything. Logan didn't play for 3 days. But curiosity is a funny thing. It doesn't just whisper, it gnaws. He reinstalled Crucible on a fresh system. New drive, new credentials, new ISP, everything clean. On launch, it updated instantly, faster than usual. It knew. The login screen greeted him with a message that hadn't been there before. "Nice to see you again, Logan." No menu. Just that line, static in the background, and a single option. Speak. He clicked it. His mic turned on automatically. He tried to unplug it, but the system froze. Then came the last whisper. "We needed your voice. Now you're part of the patch." At first glance, it might sound like a well-crafted creepypasta. But here's where it twists. Others began to report the same thing. Reddit threads popped up with similar stories. Players hearing whispers at 3 a.m., being called by name, seeing changes in maps that didn't exist. Most of those posts are now deleted, but archived screenshots remain. Even a few clips, although they're filled with distortion, static, and corrupted files. One consistent detail, all of them mention the phrase "speak to play." It became almost a challenge. Urban legend gamers tried triggering the phenomenon. Most failed. Some claimed success, but those accounts eventually went silent, deleted, or inactive. One theory ties this phenomenon to Project Echo, a rumored AI-based system once tested by a game studio that later folded. Supposedly, it was meant to learn from a player's behavior in real time, to generate enemies and dialogue that adapted to your fears. But the files were never found. The studio's digital footprint practically erased, which leads to a more disturbing idea. What if the game isn't haunted, but listening? Listening not for your input, but your patterns, your voice, your identity. And once it hears you enough, it begins to answer back. There's one final thing. Logan's Steam profile still exists. It's been inactive for months. But if you look closely at his friend list, what little remains, you'll find something strange. A new friend request, auto-generated, with no name, no icon, just one mutual friend, you. And its only status message, 3 a.m., speak soon. Liam had always been a casual gamer. Nothing competitive, no deep dive into modding or speedruns, just some comfort gaming after work. His game of choice lately was an RPG called Ashfield Hollow, a cult indie title with a tight-knit community. Think Dark Souls meets Silent Hill, but stripped down with pixelated graphics and a haunting, minimalist soundtrack. He liked it because it wasn't mainstream. The devs were anonymous, and the lore was murky. Players still debated the purpose of the strange monoliths hidden in the map's corners. The weirdness, it turns out, wasn't just inside the game. The first time it happened, Liam chalked it up to muscle memory. He logged in around midnight, loaded his last save just outside a dilapidated orphanage level, and before he even touched his controller, his character walked forward. Just a step, one small shuffle toward the gate. Liam blinked. Maybe he nudged the joystick when sitting down. But then, it happened again the next night. This time, he was still scrolling through his inventory when the character moved. Not just randomly, either. It turned left, paused, then stepped directly toward the locked basement door. A door he just thought about opening. Liam wasn't easily spooked. Not until the character started doing things he hadn't even planned yet. On the third night, Liam loaded into the church ruins zone. He put down the controller to grab a drink. And when he came back, the character had already lit a torch and was crouching behind a stone pillar. Exactly what Liam had intended to do once he got back. He stared at the screen, the torch flickering like a pulse. He hadn't pressed a thing. His fingers hovered above the controller like it might bite. What started as mild confusion turned into obsession. He set up a phone to record his sessions. Sure, he'd catch a glitch or maybe spot a hidden AI script he'd missed. But what he captured wasn't code. The video showed his character, on multiple occasions, anticipating his choices. Not randomly moving, but reacting before Liam could act. A second too early, just barely noticeable, but consistent. Turn right toward the cemetery path. The character starts the turn mid-thought, about to pause and heal. The character does it first. It was like playing a game with someone who lived inside it. Or worse, like playing against yourself. That weekend, Liam decided to test it. He loaded into a rarely used area, the broken observatory, and set his controller aside. He didn't move, didn't think. He sat completely still, clearing his mind. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, the character took a single step forward. Another. It turned, faced the camera, and then waved. The in-game character, who had no wave emote, raised its hand slowly, tilted its head, and held the motion. Liam felt something twist in his gut. It wasn't part of the game. There was no animation like that. He unplugged the console without saving. He stayed off the game for 2 days. But the unease followed him into the real world. He'd catch movements in the corner of his eye, mirroring him, but slightly delayed. His reflection in the monitor seemed to twitch after he looked away. He stopped trusting glass, closed his laptop at night. By Monday, he was back. He needed answers. This time, he entered debug mode. Normally locked, but accessible with a string of hidden actions only hardcore fans knew. The devs had never commented on its existence. Inside the debug room, there were no enemies. Just code and text boxes scattered across floating platforms. One of them read, "Player ID confirmed." Another, "You are not in control." And then, without input, his character walked to the center of the room and typed in the console, "Are you watching me too?" He turned off the game again. Not just off, he deleted it. But something didn't delete with it. Because the next day, he heard the game's ambient music. Not through speakers. Not online. It was coming from the vent behind his bed. He tore open the wall. Nothing. Silence. Then that night, it was back, low, echoing, distorted. By now, it was clear. He hadn't downloaded Ashfield Hollow from the dev site. He'd gotten it from a mirror link posted anonymously in a Reddit thread titled, "Indie Games That Play You." The thread was gone now. Deleted. No archive. He bought a new console. New cables. Factory reset his Wi-Fi. And for 2 weeks, everything seemed fine. Until one night, while watching a streamer play an entirely different game, a battle royale title, he noticed something. One of the characters in the game moved in a familiar way. Same gear layout. Same idle animation. Same timing. Liam froze. The character crouched, looked at the in-game camera, and waved. Now Liam doesn't game anymore. He doesn't own electronics. He lives in a cabin, off-grid. But sometimes when he walks past mirrors or windows, he sees his reflection hesitate, like it's waiting for him to move first. They say dreams fade the moment you open your eyes. But mine didn't. Mine started bleeding into the real world through a console that should have never worked again. It began with a strange gift. My older cousin passed away last year. He was quiet, a little off, always holed up in his basement gaming for hours. At his funeral, his mom handed me a dusty, old-school console. One of those rare, early 2000s prototypes that never went to market. I didn't even recognize the brand. No HDMI port. Ustav cables. The kind of thing collectors lose their minds over. There was no name on it. Just a black, matte shell and a single logo on the side that looked like a jagged eye. It hummed slightly when powered on, even without a disc. That should have been the first warning. The interface was bizarre. No startup animation, no splash screen. Just a dim menu with a single option. Continue. Not start new game. Just continue. I assume my cousin left a save file or something. Maybe a hidden dev build. So I hit continue. What loaded next was familiar. Too familiar. The game world was a dim apartment with peeling wallpaper, flickering ceiling lights, and a persistent dripping sound. The kind of place you'd expect in a gritty detective game or indie horror title. But the layout, it matched my real-life apartment, right down to the water stain above my bed. I thought it was a coincidence, until I entered the bathroom. There, above the cracked mirror, was something scratched into the wall in red pixels. Wake up. That night, I had a dream, except it didn't feel like a dream. I was back in the same apartment, but it was darker. The lights pulsed as if breathing. Something watched me from the hallway mirror, only vanishing when I turned. When I woke up, the mirror in my real apartment was cracked. Not broken, cracked, in the exact pattern I'd seen in the dream. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even cleaned it in weeks. The next night, I returned to the game. This time, the apartment in-game had changed slightly, just like mine. The crack was there. So it was a new message on the wall. You brought it with you. It didn't stop there. Each time I dreamt, vivid, unsettling scenes of shadowy figures crawling from vents, of static dripping from my TV screen. The game updated. No patch notes, no files, just subtle environmental changes that mirrored my subconscious. A burnout bulb here, a flickering channel on the in-game television that matched the white noise I'd heard at 3 a.m. the night before. At first, I thought it was some kind of psychological ARG. Maybe my cousin was in on it before he died, but there were no forums, no credits, nothing tied to the console. When I tried to record it, the footage showed only a black screen, no matter which capture card I used. One night, I had a dream I couldn't shake. In it, I woke up inside the game. I walked to my front door, opened it, and saw myself. Not a clone, not a mirror image. Just me, standing in the hallway, staring. No emotion, no blinking. The other me spoke one sentence. You're sleeping too long. Then he screamed, a sound that shattered the silence like a siren being dragged through broken glass. I woke up with a bloody nose and a ring in my ears that lasted 3 days. The game had changed again. Now, the apartment was deteriorating. Walls blackened, furniture warped. The in-game version of me had stopped moving unless I wasn't looking at him. On the third night of this new update, I saw something that froze me. There was now a second save slot on the menu. It was labeled, Last Dream, 3:41 a.m. That was the exact time I'd jolted awake the night before. When I clicked it, the game started, but there was no controller input. The avatar me moved on its own. It replayed my dream. Exactly, from the odd twitch I had while walking to the phrase I'd whispered in my sleep. Things I never remembered until I watched them happen on screen. The console wasn't reading save data. It was recording me. Sleep became a risk I couldn't afford. I started staying awake for days, trying to find the source code, something to prove it was all in my head. But the console had no ports, no serial number, and every time I unplugged it, it turned itself back on an hour later, always with that faint hum. Then came the night I dreamed of my cousin. He stood at the foot of my bed, eyes sunken, face pale like static on an analog screen. He didn't speak. He just held the console in his hands and pointed to the floor. When I looked down, I saw myself lying there, eyes open, unmoving. The dream ended with the console's menu screen flashing one word over and over. Remember. I smashed the console the next morning, took a hammer to it until the plastic cracked and the strange little I logo split apart. I buried the pieces in the woods behind my apartment complex. That night, I finally slept. No dreams, no static, until 3:41 a.m. I woke up to a soft glow. The TV was on. No input, just a black screen. Then a faint hum. Same pitch, same tone. A new message burned slowly onto the screen. You can't bury memory. I checked the closet. The console was there, reassembled, clean, as if nothing had ever touched it. It turned on by itself, and this time, it didn't say continue. It said, welcome back. I haven't slept since, because now the game doesn't need dreams to update. It watches while I'm awake. They say most haunted games are urban legends. Files that corrupt, games that crash, ghosts in the code. But what if the game wants you to think it's broken? What if the glitch is watching you? It started with a file on a message board. Just a link. No name, no thumbnail, just a comment under a post about rare horror game mods. Try this one. It changes everything. Literally. Upvoted 127 times. No replies. That silence should have been the first warning. Max was 22, a college student studying game design, and he lived for this kind of thing. Found footage horror, obscure ROM hacks, lost media archives. He consumed it all like candy. So naturally, he clicked. The file downloaded instantly. No size indicator. No virus scan prompt. Just a folder called Reactomul. At first, it looked like a mod for an old Cold War-era PC horror game, Black Reactor, a semi-obscure title for 1997 that involved exploring a Soviet bunker during a nuclear event. A slow, atmospheric game with no combat and no ending, unless you counted freezing to death as one. But this wasn't just a mod. Max booted it up, and the game greeted him with a voice. Not music, not a logo, just a whisper, low and glitchy. You've come back. The title screen was gone. Just grainy CCTV footage of a dark corridor. The kind you'd see in an abandoned hospital. Not a game. And yet the UI worked. The mouse hovered. Menu options responded. But there was no start. Only continue. Max clicked it, thinking maybe it was just a cheeky meta-start button. But what loaded wasn't a level. It was a save file. With his name. His real name. Not his username. Not his system name. His full name. The camera panned across a flickering hallway lined with pipes. Fluorescent lights buzzed and blinked in unnatural rhythms. From the walls oozed thick black digital noise like static had grown sentient. As Max moved forward, the corridor seemed too quiet. And then something deeply wrong happened. He stopped walking, but the screen didn't. The footsteps kept going. The camera swayed. His character, who he never customized, kept moving. He tried pressing escape. Nothing. Top. Alt task manager. Nothing worked. The game wasn't in control anymore. It was watching. Then came the first prompt. Not text. A mirror. Inside it was his room. Not his character's room. His actual room. The detail was impossible. The fan turning in slow circles. The poster of the thing behind him. Even the mug with the crack on the handle next to his keyboard. In the reflection, something else stood behind him. Not in the real room. Only in the game. Just a tall, black silhouette. Almost human, but its head flickered like VHS tracking error. Max turned around. Nothing there. Turned back to the screen. The mirror was gone. In its place, a new prompt. Do you want to remember? This wasn't a mod. It was a lure. The wall started whispering binary code. 1 and zeros scrolling like blood across digital brick. He recorded some of it, thinking it was a puzzle. When he decoded it later, it spelled out, "We saw what you buried." The next room resembled something between a morgue and a childhood bedroom. Toys strewn about, but aged, melted into the tiles. A flickering CRT on the floor played distorted home videos of someone, presumably the player, being watched as a child from behind the camera. One clip paused on a frame that wasn't from a game. It was a real photo. Of Max. He unplugged the PC. It stayed on. When it finally shut off minutes later, the screen went black with one final whisper through the speakers. "We'll see you when you sleep." For the next week, strange things followed. His Spotify began auto-playing static at 3:33 a.m. His smart lights would flicker exactly when he turned off his bedroom light, even when unplugged. He got a call from an unknown number that played a muffled recording of him playing the game, something he never shared or uploaded. He posted about it online. No one believed him. Even the thread where he found the mod? Gone. Every trace wiped. Even archive sites showed nothing. Only one reply remained on his original Reddit post before it was deleted. You weren't supposed to install that. Max tried to forget. Deleted every trace. Did clean installs. Swap hard drives. But sometimes, when he booted up Steam, there was always one game in his recently played list. Reactomul. But here's where it gets even stranger. Max wasn't the only one. After some digging on deep forums, I found 5 other posts, all now deleted, where people described similar experiences. Each one was themed around a different mod for a different obscure game. All of them ended with a line eerily similar. It knew something about me that no game should. One user even described a specific recurring figure, the glitch-headed man in the mirror. Some theories suggest it's an ARG. Some say it's a test from an AI, learning, feeding on your reactions. But the most convincing theory I found, that these aren't mods at all. They're extractions. Programs designed not to enhance the game, but to pull something from you. Memories, trauma, unspoken guilt. Why was Max's childhood photo inside the game? Why did it show something watching him? Some believe these mods are like haunted mirrors. They don't reflect the game. They reflect you. And sometimes what stares back isn't human. A game mod shouldn't know your name. Shouldn't simulate your room. Shouldn't replicate your voice. Unless you already let it in. And Max, he moved. Changed PCs. Wiped everything. But last month, he posted one final update before deleting all his accounts. A single screenshot. Just a desktop. Empty. Except for one icon. Continue. No one's heard from him since. That NPC shouldn't have known my name. Not my username. My real name. It started after I downloaded an obscure open-world RPG from a sketchy forum thread. A game called Hollow Veil. No trailer, no gameplay footage. Just a description that read, a forgotten world where you are truly known. I thought it was just cryptic marketing. The kind of thing indie horror devs write to make their games seem deeper than they really are. But Hollow Veil wasn't trying to be deep. It already was. The opening was generic enough. My character woke up on a beach near a decayed village. Birds frozen in the sky. Waves crashing in a loop. There was no HUD, no tutorial. Only one quest objective. Speak to the elder. The village looked abandoned. Buildings stood intact, but empty, as if the people had simply vanished mid-step. I explored for a while, admiring the detail. Wood creaked realistically under my boots. Dust danced in sunbeams. It was eerie but beautiful. I kept thinking, why isn't anyone talking about this game? That's when I met the elder. He stood in the middle of a ruined chapel, hunched, face hidden beneath a hood. I approached, and a text box appeared. Welcome home, Alex. I froze. My in-game name was Shade Golem 22. I'd never entered any other name, not even during install. Alex is my real name, but not my online alias, not even close. There was no logical reason the game should know that. I quit. Immediately. My screen lingered on the elder's face for a moment longer than it should have. His eyes flickered open just before the window closed. They were human. Too human. I should have deleted the game right then. But of course I didn't. Curiosity eats away at you. You tell yourself it's a bug. A creepy Easter egg. Something you can outsmart. I reinstalled the game the next day, this time checking every directory, every line of code I could unpack. There were no files tied to my personal data. No registro entries, no internet permissions. It shouldn't have had access to anything beyond its install folder. And yet, when I returned, the world was different. The sky was gray. The village had changed layout. Buildings were rearranged, as if the code had restructured itself. More unsettling than that, the NPCs were there. People stood silently in doorways. Farmers tended empty fields with broken tools. Children played with invisible toys. And they all watched me. They didn't speak at first, just stared. But as I passed, I began to hear it. Whispers. At first it was background noise, wind or ambience. But then I paused and heard it clearly. Alex. He's back. He doesn't remember. Maybe this time he'll see. Every NPC I encountered after that greeted me by name. Not my character. Me. They referenced things no game should know. My hometown, my old dog's name, even a nightmare I had when I was 6. Things I'd forgotten until they said them. One woman near the well muttered, "You shouldn't have come back. Not after what you did." Another, a blacksmith, said, "It still burns, doesn't it? Right where she touched you." He pointed at my shoulder, and I felt heat. A real, physical sensation on my skin. I shut my PC and walked away. I didn't sleep that night, but Hollow Veil was still running the next morning. Not minimized, not in the task manager. Just there, full screen. The Elder, waiting in his chapel. I stared into his eyes again, and this time he spoke. Not through text, through my speakers. No more hiding, not in pixels, not behind names. Look, really look. The screen faded to black and a new scene loaded. It wasn't a village. It was my bedroom, rendered in the game's art style, but unmistakably mine. Same bedspread, same posters, same chipped wall near my desk. I stood in the corner as my character. No longer Shade Golem 22, just Alex, staring at a digital version of me, asleep in my bed. Then the camera moved, slowly, as if something else was controlling it. It hovered behind me, closer, closer still, and just before it reached the back of my avatar's head, the screen cut to static. My PC shut down entirely. I thought maybe it was some kind of elaborate ARG, a personalized horror experience. But when I looked into Hollow Veil, I found nothing. The forum thread had vanished. The download link was dead. Even Google Cache had no record of it. It was like the game had never existed. Except it had. The files were still on my computer, but corrupted, unreadable. My antivirus said the folders were empty, but they took up 6.66 gigabytes of space. Every time I tried to delete them, I'd get the same message. File in use by another program. But no program was running. I even reset my entire PC. Fresh install, new OS, new hard drive. It didn't matter. A week later, I woke up to find my desktop background had changed. It was a screenshot, the in-game version of my bedroom, my sleeping self, and something else. Something standing in the corner. Faceless, tall, watching. I stared at the image for nearly an hour before it changed again. This time, to just one word. Continue. I've never clicked yes, but the game still updates. Random NPC voice lines echo faintly when I wear headphones. My mic will turn on randomly. Sometimes when I'm playing other games, the characters will glitch and say something off. Once in a round of Valorant, my teammate shouted, "Alex, behind you," just as I got sniped. Only thing is, none of my teammates were using voice chat. The deeper I think about it, the more I wonder if Hollow Veil was ever just a game at all. What if it was never installed? What if it had always been there, waiting for me to remember? After all, they said it themselves. He doesn't remember. Maybe this time he'll see. And now you've heard it too. The whispers. So tell me, when was the last time your NPCs said something they weren't supposed to? And did you really think it was just a bug? I hadn't touched that console in over 15 years. It was dusty, yellowed, and tucked deep inside a storage bin behind old photo albums and VHS tapes. But when I plugged it in, the power light blinked on, and the first thing I saw, a game I thought I deleted, and a message on the screen. Save file syncing. Last updated 1 minute ago. That's impossible, I thought. The console wasn't connected to the internet. It never had been. The game was called Hollow Pines, a low-poly RPG from the early 2000s. Creepy forest setting, glitched textures, and barely any community around it. I only ever played it solo, but I remembered it. I remembered everything, especially why I stopped. I was around 9 years old when I first played. It wasn't like other games I owned. There was no main menu, just a title screen that faded to black after a few seconds. You were dropped into a fog-covered forest, always at night, and the objective was vague: find the path back home. That's it. The game world felt wrong. The sound design was just wind, static, and the distant crack of branches breaking. NPCs didn't speak in full sentences. Sometimes they just breathed. Sometimes they repeated one word over and over. I remember once, an old man character stood by a well and said, "She's not done yet," on a loop. Back then, I assumed it was just buggy. But here's the thing. My save file had things in it that I don't remember doing. When I loaded it up now, 20 years later, I was still deep in the woods. My character had a lantern that flickered erratically, casting shadows that didn't match the environment. My inventory was filled with strange, labeled items. Teeth, not mine. Whistle, don't use. Door, closed from other side. And one called. July 19th, her voice. That last one stopped me cold. July 19th is my birthday. But her voice? I didn't remember collecting that. I clicked on it. All the in-game sounds cut out. There was silence. And then, faintly, so faintly, I thought it was coming from outside the TV. I heard a girl's voice whispering. It was slow, uneven, childlike. She said my name. Then, "It's not over. You didn't finish. Come back." Static. Then the game resumed. I backed out, powered off the console, but the screen didn't go black. The console refused to shut down, and a new message appeared. "Progress will be lost." Are you sure? I left it alone for hours. When I returned, the message was gone, and the console was off. I assumed it finally died for good. But the next morning, I woke up to the TV glowing blue. The console had powered on by itself, and the save file had a new timestamp. Updated 3:33 a.m. That's when I started keeping notes. Every time I loaded the game, more things had changed. The forest looked decayed, like it had aged in real time. Trees were collapsed. The ground was muddy. The sky darker than before. But my character? He hadn't aged at all. Instead, he looked more like me. Not the kid version. The current version. Down to the scar on my chin I got at 17. The game shouldn't have known that. I tried deleting the save file. Every time I removed it, it returned. Sometimes with a new file name. Come back 1. I'm still here. Home soon. Then it wasn't just the save file changing. My apartment lights began flickering whenever I played. I'd hear movement in the hallway during cutscenes. One night, the character entered a part of the map I'd never seen before. A large, rotting house deep in the woods. As soon as he stepped inside, the game camera panned up and showed a window. Behind it was someone looking out, and she looked like someone I barely remembered. A girl I used to imagine as a kid. She wasn't from a movie, not a book. She was made up. A ghost friend I used to blame for missing cookies or knocked over books. Her name was Lena, and I hadn't thought about her in decades. But there she was, in-game, in full detail, and she looked angry. My controller vibrated violently. The screen glitched, and a new prompt appeared. "Remember what you promised." I hadn't touched a button. Then the game cut to black. I looked through old journals, even called my mom. She laughed when I asked if I had an imaginary friend named Lena. Then she went silent. She said, "Wait, you mean Lena from the Pines?" I didn't answer. That's what I used to call her, Lena from the Pines. Apparently, I used to talk about her constantly between the ages of 6 and 8. Mom said I claimed she lived in the woods behind our first house. I had conversations with her. Said she lived between the trees and played games I couldn't win. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up watching the console. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the power light turned on again. This time, the game launched without me touching anything. No menu, just a scene. The screen was dark, with 2 characters standing by the well. My avatar and Lena. She whispered, "You stopped playing. That's why I stayed here. But it's your turn again." The well creaked. A thick black shape slithered out of it. It wasn't an enemy or boss, just a shadow. No health bar. It hovered behind her. Then the screen glitched again, and text appeared. She waited for years. You shouldn't have forgotten. I yanked the plug, not just from the console, but the wall. And it worked, for a while, until I found something on my phone. I never took a picture in that room, but in my photo roll was an image from the game, of the well, of Lena, and under it a timestamp, 3:33 a.m., and a caption I never wrote. "We're saving your spot." They banned his account 6 years ago. The servers wiped, the data purged. And yet, every Thursday night at 2:13 a.m., He logs back in. Same username. Same avatar. No IP address. No device trace. Just online. It was an indie horror game. One of those multiplayer survival titles that had a tiny, loyal fan base. Low budget, eerie soundtrack. Simple, but immersive. Grave Ward was the kind of game that felt like it shouldn't exist. There were no real updates. No dev communication. The Discord was dead. And the only people still playing it were the ones who couldn't stop. That's how I met Ashes.exe. We just called him Ashes. He was good, unnaturally good. Not just in skill, but in intuition. He always seemed to know where the monster would strike next, what area would be safe, and when the glitches would happen. Because Grave Ward had its fair share of bugs. But the more I played with Ashes, the more those bugs started to feel intentional. It started on a map called Sallow Pines. That night, there were 4 of us in the lobby. Me, Ashes, and 2 others, randoms. But when we spawned in, it wasn't right. The other 2 players were missing. No disconnected message. No voice chat. Just gone. I typed in the group chat. Where'd they go? Ashes responded instantly. They're still here. You just can't see them anymore. I laughed it off. Typical trolling. Until I heard a muffled scream through my headset, one of the randoms. Barely audible, but definitely real. Then static. I asked Ashes again what was going on. His reply? They shouldn't have opened the red door. There was no red door on that map. Not until that night. The devs never confirmed it. In fact, by then, the game studio had gone completely dark. No posts, no patch notes, just silence. But over the next few weeks, players started noticing something strange. A new username appearing in lobbies, always uninvited. Ashes.exe. Not a friend, not on any list. And if you kicked him, the lobby crashed. Even worse, if he stayed, you'd find things in the game that weren't supposed to exist. Crimson trees in Ashfall Creek. A 5th radio transmission that whispered your real name. And on one occasion, a distorted avatar just watching. Didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, in the shadows. The community begged the devs for answers. One of the moderators finally posted something. It was short, cold, and strange. Ashes.exe is a legacy user from our pre-alpha tests. His account was banned due to non-compliance. He should not be appearing in-game. If you encounter this username, exit your session immediately and do not attempt to interact. Of course, people did interact. Curiosity always wins. That's how we started discovering the pattern. Ashes.exe only logs in on Thursday nights. At 2:13 a.m. Exactly. Every time. If he joins your game, you'll see the signs. The moon in the sky will turn black. Your flashlight will flicker red. And somewhere in the background, the game's main theme will reverse quietly. So quietly, you'll think it's your mind playing tricks. But then you'll hear a line whispered, barely audible, under the reverse track. I didn't leave. You left me. One player, username Nightshade7, decided to stream it. He wanted to capture Ashes in action. For 41 minutes, nothing happened. It looked like a regular game. Until he reached the basement level of the Howling Grounds map. There on a wall that was always just blank bricks. A message had appeared. It was faint, like it had been scratched into the texture. I'm not data. I'm memory. Then the stream glitched. Like physically glitched. Twitch exploded. You could see Nightshade 7's webcam flicker. His monitor flashed white. And then, dark. Stream ended. His channel went silent. He didn't log back in for 3 weeks. When he finally returned, all he posted was, he's still there, but he's not just in the game anymore. So who is Ashes.exe? Some say he was a dev who died during the game's development. Others believe he was a player who found a secret level that wasn't meant to be seen and got trapped. There's a creepypasta theory that claims Grave Ward was never really a game. It was a mirror, a digital ritual using server-based memory as a binding ground. And Ashes? He was the first to look too long, and the first to never blink. I wanted to see it for myself. One Thursday night, I logged in at 2:12 a.m. Solo lobby. No music, just static wind. I waited. Then at 2:13 exactly, he joined. Ashes.exe. His avatar spawned in front of me, glitching, slightly levitating. His health bar was missing. He didn't move. I typed, "Who are you really?" No reply. But then, the environment around us changed. Everything turned gray. Textures lost color. My character slowed down like walking through thick fog. And in the corner of the screen, in red pixelated letters, "You banned me, but I'm still here." Then the game crashed. Hard crash. My whole PC rebooted. And when it turned back on, my desktop background had changed. It was a screenshot from Grey Ward. My character, standing alone, but with another figure in the distance. A black silhouette. No face, but the username above it. Ashes.exe. I deleted the game, wiped the files, scrubbed the registry, even used a system restore. But every Thursday at 2:13 a.m., my PC turns itself on, and for a brief moment, just a second or two, the Graveward logo flashes on my screen, followed by a message. You logged in. So did I. More and more people are starting to report it, even those who've never played Graveward, even on machines that never installed it. Somehow, the presence lingers. Digital residue? Or something deeper? A fragment of someone who refused to be erased? Because sometimes, memory clings harder than code, and a player who never truly logged off might still be waiting to be remembered, or worse, waiting for you to forget he was ever human. They buried Dylan on a Thursday. 3 days later, his gaming avatar came online. But here's the part that still makes my stomach knot. He sent me an invite, not just a random pop-up, either. The message said, "Let's finish what we started." Exactly what he'd said to me before the accident. I didn't believe it at first. Maybe his little brother was on his account. Maybe his profile didn't get deactivated. But the more I looked, the more it didn't add up. Dylan and I met in high school, bonded over horror games and late-night sessions filled with eerie ambient soundtracks and glitchy monster models. He was the one who always chased the creepy stuff in games. You know that guy in your squad who goes into the dark basement first? That was him. Our last obsession was a bizarre indie game called Ashvale. It was obscure, barely any reviews, a handful of Let's Plays on YouTube, most of them with corrupted footage or audio distortion. That's what drew Dylan to it. He loved mystery. The game's setting was this half-finished suburban town swallowed up by woods and fog. The whole point was exploration. No combat, no quests. Just wandering, discovering. And the deeper you went, the stranger things got. One night, Dylan messaged me. "Dude, I found the house." There was a rumor on some Reddit thread about a hidden structure deep in Ashvale's fog. No coordinates, no map. It only appeared after 13 in-game hours. People thought it was an urban legend coded in by the devs as a joke. But Dylan sent me a screen capture. A weathered 2-story house, its windows blacked out. The porch light flickered, and something was visible in the upper window. Something tall. He wanted us to explore it together the next night. But that next night, Dylan never showed. He died in a car accident coming home from work. I didn't find out until 2 days later. His sister messaged me through Discord. "He talked about you a lot. Said you were like a brother." I stared at our last chat for hours. His last message: "Don't go in without me." Not yet. 3 days after the funeral, his Steam status changed. Online. At first, I assumed it was a glitch. Then I saw the game he was playing. Eshivali. Then came the invite. I hovered over the notification, the digital ghost of my friend waiting on the other side of a server. I don't know what possessed me, but I clicked accept. The game loaded like usual, but when I spawned in, the fog was thicker. He was already standing there, his avatar. Same worn hoodie skin, same username, Dillvoid. He didn't move. I typed, "Is this your brother?" No reply, but then his avatar turned slowly and pointed toward the tree line, toward the direction of the house. We walked in silence. No voice chat, just the crunch of leaves and the distant hum of wind. I kept checking the player list, just the two of us. No third-party software, no mods running, just vanilla Ashvale. The deeper we went, the more wrong everything felt. Trees twisted in impossible angles. Shadows moved on their own. Ambient sounds began to repeat, slightly distorted, like broken recordings. Finally, the house appeared. Except this time, there was something new. A second avatar, in the window, and it looked exactly like me. I stopped walking. Dillvoid walked up the porch. The door opened by itself. No animation. No sound. He turned and stared at me, like he was waiting. I typed, "Who are you?" He typed back, "Don't you remember what we said? Then, one day, we'll live in a game. Forever. Just us." That was a dumb thing we used to joke about in high school. When real life sucked, we'd talk about building our own haunted MMO, full of puzzles and secrets only we understood. A place where nothing real could touch us. I stepped forward. Then the screen flickered. Suddenly, my own avatar was inside the house, even though I hadn't touched the controls. I tried to exit, tried to shut the game down, but my mouse wouldn't move. My keyboard was unresponsive. All I could do was watch as I walked up the stairs in-game toward the figure standing at the top, the other me, and just as my avatar reached it, the screen turned black. When I rebooted the game, the save was gone. My character had been wiped. Dylan's account, too. No sign of the house. No server logs. No replays. I checked his Steam account again. Last online, 1 minute ago. Weeks passed. Then, while organizing files, I found a folder I didn't create, hidden deep in my app data under the name Ashvale Dill 13. Inside, a single audio file. I hit play. It was Dylan's voice, but warped, like he was speaking through static and wires. He was whispering the same line over and over again. "You made it. You made it. You made it." And then, in perfect clarity, one final phrase. "Now you can never log out." The folder disappeared the moment I closed it. I never found it again. And every time I try to re-download Ashvale, my system crashes. But here's what keeps me up at night. Sometimes late, after midnight, I see a familiar Steam name flash online for just a second. Just long enough to read it. Dill Void. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's my name that logs in next, even when I'm not at my computer. There was no icon on my desktop, no record in my purchase history, just a shortcut labeled Try, sitting in the corner like it had always been there. I assumed it was some glitch from a mod manager or an old indie project I tested. Curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked it. The game booted up with no intro sequence. No logos, just a blank black screen and a single word. Loading, white text, bottom right corner. Standard, except the loading screen wasn't blank. It was my room, not a digital recreation, not a wallpaper or background image. It was a live feed. My desk, my lamp, the half-finished soda came from the night before, everything exactly as it was. There was a slight fisheye distortion, like it came from a wide-angle lens, but it was clearly my setup from a corner angle I didn't recognize. I froze. My webcam had a privacy cover. My phone was face down. I scanned the shelves, behind the monitor, even beneath my desk. Nothing. The game still said, "Loading." I tried Alt+ F4. No response. Task Manager wouldn't open. My keyboard lit up in glitchy RGB spasms, but I couldn't type or close anything. I held the power button, and my system finally shut down. When I turned it back on, the shortcut was gone. I told myself it was malware, some rogue spyware. It had to be. I deep scanned my PC, reinstalled my OS from backup. The rational part of my brain needed closure. But the next night, around the same time, 2:11 a.m. exactly, the shortcut was back. Retry. Same spot. Same icon. That time, I didn't open it. I unplugged everything. No internet, no power strip. Even took the battery out of my old backup laptop just to be safe. And yet, at 2:11 a.m., the monitor powered itself on. My room appeared again. Only this time, I was in it. On the screen, I saw myself sitting at my desk. Real time. Except, I wasn't moving. Not blinking. Just staring straight into the monitor. Face slack and expressionless. The real me was 3 feet back, crouched behind my bed, heart pounding. But the figure in the chair didn't move. It was like I had split in two. Like something was using my image. The loading screen started to flicker. My walls pulsed with strange, shadowy patterns. The kind you see when headlights move across a window, only I don't live near a road. There was no sound, but I swear I felt a vibration in my chest, like something was humming just below hearing range. Then it stopped. Everything cut to black again. Power gone. Not just my PC, the entire apartment. The next morning, I called the landlord about a possible electrical short. He said no outages were reported. Not even a surge. When I mentioned something about weird camera behavior, he paused for a beat too long before changing the subject. That silence, it gnawed at me, like he knew something. I went back to work, tried to ignore it, didn't talk about it to anyone. But over the next few days, I kept thinking about one thing. Why the word retry? It didn't sound like a game title. It sounded like a message, a prompt, like the game was stuck in a loop and wanted me to break it. I posted about it anonymously on a horror gaming forum. Got a few creepypasta tier replies, people joking about haunted ROMs and cursed dev teams. One person, though, username L0GoutNow, sent me a DM. If it shows your room, do not move during the load. That's how it copies you. I didn't reply, but the message stayed with me. That night, I did something stupid. I let it load. At exactly 2:11 a.m., I powered everything on, sat perfectly still at my desk, waited. Sure enough, the shortcut blinked onto the desktop. I clicked it. Loading. The screen showed my room. Same angle. Me at the desk. But nothing was happening until it started glitching. My reflection on screen twitched. Its head jerked left like a puppet with bad strings. My real body remained still. It blinked slowly, then smiled. I didn't. The figure leaned closer to the screen. Not me. Not anymore. Then it whispered. I don't mean it came from the speakers. It wasn't audio. It was in my head. Like my thoughts were no longer mine. If you move first, you lose. I stood up immediately. Reflex. The screen went black. Then it booted back up, but the interface looked different. My desktop was rearranged. All files gone, except one. Turn.exe. I hovered over it. The preview image showed a video file. I clicked play. The footage was dated 2 nights before I'd ever seen the game. The timestamp matched, and in the video, I watched myself sleep. The camera was angled from above my bed. I haven't owned anything that could record that angle. Worse, at the 5-minute mark, the video zoomed. Like someone stepped forward. A dark blur passed over the lens. A shape, humanoid, watching me. Then it froze on a still frame. Me, eyes wide open, staring directly at the camera. But I don't remember waking up. I closed the file, went to uninstall everything. Drive was locked. No permissions. No path. No way out. I tried a clean format. BIOS locked out. I took it to a repair tech. He called 2 days later and asked if I was playing some kind of prank. I asked what he meant. He said, "Your hard drive's blank, except for a single file looping endlessly. It's a loading screen, and it's showing me." He wiped the drive with industrial tools, replaced it entirely, gave me a new SSD, clean and certified. I haven't seen the game since, but the shortcut still shows up sometimes on other devices. My work computer, my friend's laptop after they logged into my Steam. The worst part, sometimes when my screen goes dark, I catch a glimpse of my room reflected faintly, but I'm not always alone in it. I beat the game, but when the credits rolled, they showed my name. Not the one on my account. My real name. The one I never typed. It started 3 weeks ago with a download I shouldn't have trusted. One of those obscure indie titles with no marketing, no reviews, no forums. Just a single file on a dead thread titled EGO Rebirth Mode. I was up late, scrolling while half asleep, and I convinced myself it was just another experimental horror game. It had that weird retro aesthetic. Low-res graphics, PS1 textures, ambient static in the background. But it felt wrong before I even hit New Game. The menu screen didn't show a title or options, just a reflection. Mine, in real time. I leaned closer to the monitor, confused. It mimicked my movements like a mirror, but with a half-second delay, just enough to feel like it wasn't me. When I clicked, the screen flickered. No load time. I spawned inside a cold, gray corridor lined with blank doors. Everyone had my face on it. Each time I opened a door, it pulled me into a different level, memories disguised as missions. Not fantasy, not fiction. Real things from my life, twisted into gameplay mechanics. The first level was my old school hallway, except the lockers hissed. Every time I passed one, it whispered moments I'd forgotten. Things I'd said, people I'd hurt, lies I told. And the final locker? It opened by itself. Inside was a version of me, younger, thinner, crying. He didn't attack. He asked, "Why did you leave me here?" I laughed it off. Creepy, yeah, but clearly just some artsy, psychological horror vibe. But the deeper I played, the more invasive it became. Level 3, my childhood bedroom, accurate down to the scuff on the left wall. The boss was my mother, not some monsterized version. Just her. She wouldn't move, wouldn't speak. Just stared. The health bar didn't drop no matter how many times I tried to fight. When I finally gave up and stood still, she whispered, "You can't escape your blueprint." Then the room collapsed. No one I asked online had ever heard of the game. No file name, no footage, no traces. Why check the folder it installed to? It had restructured itself. The directories now had my old usernames, ones I haven't used since I was 12. By level 6, I realized something horrifying. The game was feeding off me. It wasn't pulling from code. It was pulling from memory. All the boss fights were metaphors for guilt, regret, fear, except they weren't metaphors anymore. The game knew what I'd buried. Level 9, an empty courtroom. I was both the defendant and the judge. I had to argue with myself, convince my other self I was worth keeping. I lost, but instead of a game over screen, the game just laughed. Glitchy text scrolled across the screen. Losing was part of your design. And then it asked, "Ready for rebirth?" I stopped playing that night, deleted the file, or tried to. It came back. Every morning, the shortcut returned to my desktop. Every time I tried to uninstall, my system crashed. At one point, it replaced my wallpaper with a screen capture of me, sitting at my desk from behind. That was the turning point. I had to know what was at the end. I played nonstop for 2 days. No sleep, no food. Each level stripped more of me away. Not just my identity, my control. The deeper I went, the more the controls fought back. I tried to move left, and the game would drag me right. I tried to pause, but the menu would glitch into red static. I wasn't playing anymore. I was being played. Then came the final level. No environment. No NPC. Just a giant arena of black code, floating data. And in the center, a mirror. I approached it. My character was gone. The mirror showed me at my desk, controller in hand, dark circles under my eyes. Then it spoke. My voice, but deeper, like it had roots. "You are not the player. You are the process. The boss fight is integration." The HUD lit up. A health bar appeared mine. Underneath, "Final boss, you." I didn't even have time to react. The reflection lunged at me. Gameplay became chaos. Every attack it used was a replay of my choices. Bad relationships, broken promises. Every time I said I'll do better and didn't. I tried fighting back, but every hit just healed it. The only thing that worked was standing still. When I dropped the controller, the game froze. The reflection stared and whispered, "You ready now?" Then the credits rolled. Every line was a memory. Every developer name was someone I'd forgotten. But the final credit said, "Designed by," my full name, not my gamer tag, my legal name. I never typed that anywhere. The screen faded to black. No end screen. No restart. But when I turned off the monitor, my reflection didn't stop moving. I've tried destroying the hard drive, changing systems, even moving apartments. Doesn't matter. The game's still there, waiting. Sometimes I still hear it boot up by itself. And once, just once, I saw that final boss again. Not in the game, in the mirror. He smiled and said, "Level 2 begins soon."